Okay, y'all. And it's so funny. I always start my podcast with y'all. And I just watched one of Brock Johnson's reels the other day where he said saying y'all is a bad deal. But Brock, I'm from the South and this is what I say all the time. So today you're going to put me in my place. I have the one and only Brock Johnson on the show, Instagram, reel, famous, YouTube, TikTok, all the things. And I was literally watching his reels the other day and I was like, well, fuck, I'm about to have this guy on my podcast and I can't say y'all.
Well, listen, y'all. The honest truth is you can say y'all in your content. It was really primarily when I'm referring to the Instagram stories and the reels that start with "Hey y'all," but especially a podcast a little bit different. I think the average podcast listener subconsciously knows that they're a part of an audience. They're not on an actual phone call with us right now. So I think y'all in a podcast is totally fine.
I know, but you've totally ruined my whole entire
I
Instagram
know.
story
I
vibe,
know.
Brock. You
Sorry
guys,
about that.
I no, that's all right. It's perfect. Well, I am going to take that advice and I got to switch my language because I am joined today by the one and only Brock Johnson, who is he's the man when it comes to Instagram. Obviously, he is well connected with IG, Facebook, Meta, all the things. He basically helps them become better at their job. So I better listen to the advice from the one and only Brock Johnson. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. What an amazing intro. That was very, very sweet. I'm just a guy who posts reels. That's all I do, but I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Well, you do a hell of a job of it. And basically, this started for those of you who might live under a rock and don't know who Brock is. You really started this only back when I was looking through your intake form. This really only started in April of 2021.
That's when it blew up. So
Okay.
I originally started Instagram coaching, helping people with this sort of thing in 2018, maybe even 2017. But the blow up happened. The massive following started April 1st, 2021, when I set a challenge for myself for the month of April only. Supposedly, that's what I told myself. For the next 30 days, I'm going to post one reel per day. I'm going to see how this goes. I'm going to see what happens. That was wildly successful. That was flipping awesome. And when you have success early on, it's always really easy to keep going. So I was like, I'm just going to keep doing this. And here we are now. I think I just passed the 900-day mark of consistent posting. And we're still going at least one reel a day. The growth has still been awesome. But that was like really when the crazy growth started. That wasn't necessarily when the business started.
Okay, cool. Because
Yeah.
it's so interesting about that. It had been up until last October. So I'm much older than you, Brock. Are you only 24, 25?
I'm 26 now,
Oh, you're
so I'm
26.
getting up
Okay.
there.
Okay. You have to update your bio because it says that you're 24 years old
Ooh, I
and
got to update
you got to
that.
update that. Well, I am much older than you. I'm going to be 41 next month. But when I turned 40 last year, I took 3 years off or 3 weeks off my business. But prior to that, on social media, I had posted every single solitary day on my stories. And I started doing it the exact same way. I just committed to myself that I was going to post one story per day, every single day, no matter what, never miss it. And last October was the first time it
Wow.
was a little over 4 years that I did not post. I said that I was good with it to take that 3 weeks off and I posted here and there, but really for 4 years, I did the exact same thing. But
Wow.
the funny thing about it is mine did not go nearly as well as yours.
That's funny.
That's cool. Well, okay. So before that, so for those of you who don't know, you got in this, I'm assuming a little bit because of your parents and their you know, I don't know if I can bring that up or I should bring that up, but your
Go
mom
for it.
is Chalene Johnson, who has a massive social media presence. Obviously, she's been around for a really long time. So I'm
Yep.
assuming you watched what your mom and dad were doing and you noticed that like, oh, wow, this can be really, really helpful. So how did you start into this social media business?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Growing up, it was very much monkey see, monkey do. It wasn't that we sat around the dinner table and talked about business and entrepreneurship. We had a very normal family life growing up, at least normal from our
Yeah.
perspective, of course. But we didn't talk about entrepreneurship. We weren't sitting down and getting business lectures from our parents. And I say we because it was my sister and I. We watched them. We got to see the pros and cons of entrepreneurship. We got to see the awesome things like our parents never missing a game, never missing a practice, getting to drive us to school every single day, never having to worry about losing a job. But we also got to see like the negative things, the struggles, the late nights, the early mornings, the deadlines, the what happens when everything hits the fan and you are in charge of everything because you're the boss. So we got to see all of that growing up. And growing up, I had a million different little odd businesses, odd jobs, little doing this here and there, make a couple $100, raise money for this, resell this thing. And then my freshman year of college is really when I stepped into my own real business and my first real income opportunity. And that was at that time, it was a course, an online course where I was teaching moms how to keep their teens safe on Snapchat. So that was my first business because at that time there was like a lot of drama on the news about what's going on with Snapchat. The messages are disappearing. You know, it's a bad place where bad things are happening. What's going on with your teens? And I was like, well, I'm a teen and I understand marketing and I understand what's going on this platform. So I could basically just teach people how to use it, teach them how to keep their kids safe. And that's what the course was. But shortly after that, I realized that Snapchat had a huge untapped marketing potential. People, and this was in like 2016, had been using Instagram for marketing. People had been using Facebook for marketing. TikTok didn't exist yet. People had been using YouTube for marketing, but no one was really using Snap for marketing. And yet stories were huge and everyone was consuming Snapchat stories. So I began teaching my followers at that time, who were primarily moms who I had just taught how to use Snapchat. I began teaching them, how do you use Snapchat stories for marketing? How do you use this specific kind of content, this specific feature to market, grow your business, grow your brand, and build a customer base? But then shortly after that, Instagram copied Snapchat with Instagram stories. And it also coincided that I was taking a kind of mandatory break from my business at that time. And so when I came back, I was like, well, I'm going to go with everyone to Instagram and Instagram stories. And that's how I got into exactly what I do today, which is helping people grow their brand and make more money on Instagram. That's how kind of this journey ended up here.
That's so cool. Did you, and I think I probably know the answer, but did you intend for the journey to end up where you are today?
No, absolutely not. And so to kind of circle back to your previous question before this about my mom and, you know, her and my dad having dozens of businesses growing up and my mom having a huge social media following. I mean, she had over 500,000 followers on Instagram when I was in high school. And I never thought that that was going to be me. I never thought that was going to be, that was never my dream. That was never my end goal for myself. But it was just kind of like, hey, I have this skill set. I know how to do it because I've quite literally had my parents do it before me. And I also knew that, hey, if I want to build my own business, I'm going to need a group of people to market it to. I'm going to need a customer base. And there's no better free advertising than social media. And so that's kind of where the impetus for posting on Instagram began and growing my Instagram began. And then I think a big part of it is luck and being in the right place at the right time, knowing the right people, doing the right things, pulling the right levers. And that's kind of where the viral growth, the 600K followers in a couple years came from.
That's so cool. So a couple things there. You know, obviously I know that we don't know each other. You don't really know much about me, but I came from a golf background. So I played professional golf, but before that, like I came from a golf family. And that's what I was kind of put into, was like, go play golf and your life will be amazing. And I was actually, you know, at little over your age, when I was like 27, I kind of had like externally everything was awesome, like making money, playing golf, modeling, doing all the things, but I was like really, really miserable. Do you really enjoy what you do now, or do you do it because it was just the thing to do? Or do you even know that yet?
Yeah. So I flip and love what I do.
Okay, cool.
It brings me so much joy. What you were just describing, that was my life, but replace the word golf with football.
Oh,
now, I loved playing football. I enjoyed it. My dad played professionally. My uncle played professionally. My grandpa is one of the winningest high school football coaches in the history of the world. So that was who I grew up with. And, you know, to talk about what I was originally saying about, our dinner table, we didn't talk about entrepreneurship. What we did talk about was football. That was
Okay.
our life. That was my entire life. My dream, my passion, my end goal was to be an NFL quarterback playing on Sundays. That didn't happen for a wide variety of reasons. I did love it, but ultimately that was my everything. Now I am a much more well-rounded human being. I am much less of a perfectionist and a people pleaser. But all of that to say, I flip and love what I get to do. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm able to stay so consistent and kind of be like the Energizer bunny who just keeps going, is because I wake up every day and I love editing content. I love creating reels. I love scripting out podcasts and YouTube videos. Like it genuinely brings me a lot of joy. And I think that's essential for anyone in any business in order to actually be able to sustain what they're doing long term.
Oh my gosh, you are so wise beyond your years. It took me until like your time for me to really understand that. But I also do feel like one of the cool things about being raised by two parents who understood the power of mindset, who understood like that is really what your mom is. I don't know your dad a ton, but that's really what your mom is all about, right? Is like the power of the mind and motivation and like taking care of yourself and the
Yeah.
whole holistic side of life. And I think that that's pretty amazing that you had that instilled in you, because I didn't have any idea that, your mind created your reality. And now you're, kind of like a breathing, walking billboard for that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I really appreciate that, by the way. But I think, yeah, I had parent privilege for sure. Like my parents raised me and my sister with a lot of things that I feel very fortunate looking back on. Of course, like we were raised comfortably, definitely, but more so like being raised by a mom and even a dad who very much believed in therapy. And so
Yes.
being like a high school and college football player who, like, when things were crumbling, I could turn to therapy and I didn't just turn to violence or video games or whatever else guys do. Like that was absolutely huge. And you said you don't really know much about my dad. Most people don't. He's more of like the CFO behind the scenes. He does all the numbers so that my mom can do all the videos. But yeah, he definitely is extremely aligned with my mom on pretty much all of those things.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah. And what you said is 100% the truth. I mean, for me, I had a horrible eating disorder. Like that's where my, quote unquote pain manifested into that, because I was so out of alignment for my life. And so it's so cool that obviously you guys live like you don't live in California anymore though, right?
We just moved 2 months ago. Born and
Oh.
raised in California, but over the last 4 years, my now wife and I, we've moved around quite a bit. And right now we live in Park City, Utah.
I think that's so cool. You guys were living out of a van for a while too, which is so neat. You guys were like
Yeah,
traveling, living
thank you.
life.
Yeah, we do that every winter, actually. Well, every winter for the last 2 or 3 winters, we've lived in our Airstream trailer and just traveled around. We're big snowboarders, so we traveled around and snowboarded. And now we were finally like, well, hey, why don't we just actually live across the street from the ski resort? So now we live in Park City and we can snowboard every day.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Yeah, I grew up snowboarding. I was like one of the youngest females ever. Like when snowboards first came out, when they were like those big chunky Burton
Yeah.
snowboards that were horrible. I was like one of the first people to do that. I probably haven't touched it in like 20 years. Now that I live in Arkansas, I travel when it's to go warm, not cold. That's so cool.
I love that.
Yeah, so cool. So, and I think it's amazing that you obviously have a passion for what it is that you get to do. And like ultimately, like right now, you help people grow their content to be able to make money, which is obviously like the number one goal for most people who have a social media business and presence. What do you see right now as the thing that something that I really respect you for is the fact that you post a lot about social media not being the be all end all and not letting it control your life and not making like, a lot of people base their worth off of how many likes, how many views, all of that shit that really hurts people. Like, I feel like we have a really big, almost pandemic when it comes to the harm that this is doing. So how do you actually help people not go down that rabbit hole? Because listening to you, I have 675,000 followers. Oh, this is amazing. But, what about the person who doesn't?
Yeah, totally. So that is something that I actively am aware of. And on one hand, I have to speak to my own credibility and speak to what I've done because that qualifies in positions where I'm at. But I also am very aware of the challenges, the mental health side of social media. My wife went to school to be a therapist. So, like within our family, we're very well versed in that side of life. But also, I think it again goes back to my background in sports, where I had to learn myself personally in sports that I could not attach my worth to the results. The results for me in sports were throwing touchdowns and winning games. Now that I'm on social media, it's a lot easier for me to be like, yeah, my worth has nothing to do with how many likes this post got. And so that's something I always try to reiterate to my audience is that if you draw your worth or your motivation or your consistency or your inspiration from those extrinsic factors that you cannot control, such as how many likes you got, how many views you got, did your post go viral, you're going to constantly be struggling. It's going to suck. Your social media is not going to be an enjoyable place. But instead, you can reframe things and detach from that end result and focus on finding joy in the process. You're going to be able to sustain that consistency a lot more easily and a lot more enjoyably. So for myself, it's literally my desktop screensaver says find joy. I have it tattooed right here on my ribs. It's my biggest, most painful tattoo I got. It says find joy. It's like my life's leading principles, where one of the biggest reasons that I'm able to stay so consistent on Instagram is not because I have a team and I have AI helping me and it's my full-time job and all these little strategies. It's that I really enjoy doing it. I wake up and I have found different areas of Instagram, not all of Instagram, but different areas of content and Instagram and social media that does fill up my cup and that does bring me joy and that is not circumstantial or superficial or based off those end results. And so I'm able to sustain, right? I'm able to have a post that gets a third of my normal engagement, but it's like water off a duck's back. I can just keep on trugging along and keep creating content because my focus, my joy was never sourced from those likes to begin with.
Oh, so good. One thing that I didn't know, really about you before I asked you to be on the show was the fact that your faith is a big part of your life. And
Yeah, absolutely.
that's a huge part. That's everything that I believe in. Obviously, it's the main thing that keeps me going. Do you feel like you bring in your faith to your posting? Like, I feel like sometimes people have a hard time doing that because it's a little bit taboo. Do you bring that into your content?
Yeah, I think like I used to bring it in a lot more. It used to
Did
be
you?
something I would literally like post about entire posts on my feed about my faith. Now it's not necessarily that I'm ashamed of it or anything like that. I just focus more on my specific niche and what I'm specifically posting about, my topic on Instagram. But I like to think of it as like if it's my job to be a light or to be a lighthouse, I don't need to go around screaming, I'm a lighthouse. Look at me. I'm a 42-foot tall lighthouse with a beam that spins around and shines into the ocean. I don't need to say those things. I can just be the light. Like if there's a ship out on the sea, it doesn't need a lighthouse to scream, I'm a lighthouse. It just needs the lighthouse to shine the light. And so I think that the way I live my life, hopefully, is able to be that light. And that's kind of my goal every single day. And no means am I perfect or even great at it, but it's something that I'm constantly trying to think about is how can I spread that joy? How can I be that light? How can I spread that love rather than how can I tell people about the love that I want to spread? Or how can I tell people about the light that I believe in?
Yeah, no, that's a perfect way. So anyone who's coming to you, obviously I think there's a couple different stages. So what is your best advice to someone who is beginning stages of their Instagram and TikTok? Actually, did you just start a new TikTok? Like, is this like this is a purposeful strategy, I'm assuming. Okay, tell
Yes,
me
it
a little
is.
bit about this.
Yeah, so it's one that it's from like if I was someone who was in love with the numbers, I could have never made this decision. I'll
Yes,
give
I
you kind
love
of
it.
the background of what happened. So the too long don't read, if anyone that mutes the podcast right now, is I deleted my TikTok with 350,000 followers. Here's what happened. In 2019, I hopped on TikTok before it blew up. TikTok really blew up like because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Everyone's at home, everyone's watching TikTok. But I got on it in January 2019. So 15, 14 months before it really blew up in the US. And I like to dance. I like to let my freak flag fly. I like to have fun. At that time, I was also a college football player. So I combined the two loves. And especially in the early videos, it was oftentimes me and my best friend, who was a fellow teammate, we would just film these little like dancing trends, because that's what the early days of TikTok were. It was nothing but Charlie D'Amelio doing her dances. So we would do some dancing trends, and we do them in the locker room. We do them with our football pads on. We do them after a practice in the mud, and we're like dirty and covered in this grime. But we're filming like ourselves twerking and doing these little dance routines in the locker room. And so those blew up. I think our first video hit like over 1 million. Our second video got like 13 million. Our third video got like 7 million. And so boom, in a matter of like 5 posts, my TikTok had 300,000 followers. Great, right? Here's the problem. Those followers followed me for one thing.
Yeah.
Dancing in the locker room and being goofy. And while that is a part of who I am, that is not my business. That's not my ideal follower. That's not my demographic. And also, that part of my life came to an end 12 months later because the pandemic hit. I graduated college. I'm not playing college football. It would be really weird if I just rolled up, 5 years later and I was like, hey guys, don't mind me. I got to film some TikToks in the locker room today. So I couldn't post about that anymore, but I still had all those followers. So for a few years, I tried to fight through it. I tried to make it work, but I had 300,000 followers who didn't really care about growing on Instagram. They didn't really care about building a business online. They just wanted me to do some more twerking in my shoulder pads. And so it was never going to grow. It was never really going to work, right? They were never going to be interested in what I had to say or what I had to post. So I made the decision to ultimately rip off that Band-Aid. Not exactly delete the account, like it still exists, but stop using it, right? Post, say, hey, you can unfollow. The first line of the bio says like, don't follow this account. And I started a new account and it's been growing slow. It's not like it's been an overnight success. But yeah, I decided to start that new account on TikTok, and it wasn't the easiest decision. It took a few years to get there, but I think it was necessary.
I think that this is so unbelievably helpful for so many people who are listening, because what Brock just said is 100% bang on, especially in like, I talk about the fact that, are you an influencer or are you a person of influence? Like, I think that there's a big difference here. And I think that, Brock is a numbers guy. His posts have to go viral. He's got a big community. Like, you're all about numbers. There's people that follow me that might hire me, that might follow me for like a year. I don't need millions of followers or hundred thousands of followers in order to have a really successful business. And what Brock just said is he had to be willing to get rid of the people who were never going to give him a dollar. And he now may only have, I don't even know how many people are on your current TikTok, but like, let's say he did have 300,000 people. And how many you got on there right now?
It's let's pull it up real time. It is 1,672.
1,672. But guess what? 1,672 of those people are there because they want to grow their Instagram. And those are people who are willing to throw credit cards at him. Those are people who are willing to consume. No, but they really are. Those are people who are willing to consume your content because they're there for what you have to say. And I think so many people get so caught up in the likes, the follows, the following, and all of the things when you're really not exactly, like, if you're not clear on exactly why you're posting and what you're trying to get a person to do, click, follow, like, whatever, share, you are sadly mistaken. And I think it's really cool that you did that, because I actually saw a ton of people do that on Instagram, probably like, I think it was last year, that a lot of people were deleting their accounts, starting fresh accounts, really making sure the people that were following them were people who were going to purchase from them. So it is one of those things that if you are caught up on the numbers and that, oh my God, take your breath away starting a new account, it's actually smart for business if you really know the strategy that you're doing.
1,000%, 1,000%. And like you said, I love that you said that not every business, in fact, the majority of businesses don't need 100,000 followers to be a successful business. Like, there's like the Economist article that came out that says like 1,000 true fans is what you need.
Yep.
Well, I got 1,600 over on TikTok right now, so that's already more than enough. You don't need 100,000. I don't need hundreds of thousands, but as someone who teaches people how to grow, it makes sense that I have also grown myself. But yeah, for 99% of business owners, you don't need hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, absolutely. So when someone buys something from you, it's your community, right? It's your subscription. Yeah.
So that's the primary business. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a lower ticket. That's something, you know what I mean? So like Brock understands what he's doing in business. And I think a lot of people who come on to social media platforms, they're not super clear on exactly what you do. And they're not super clear on what you actually need in order to create a lot of income. Like know who you are and know what your purpose is. So for the newer people who are new to social media, what do you think are the top 3 things people need to be doing? I'm sure I could, tell you what I think you're going to say, but if you're someone new to social media and you're wanting to grow your following, what would you tell those type of people?
Step one is what you just said, which is identifying your niche. And it's not something mystical, magical out in the universe that you're going to discover one day. It's just something you pick, just like a jacket in the closet. You just pick it, you put it on, you try it out for a couple months and see if it's a good fit, see if you enjoy wearing it, see if people are liking that you're wearing it. Step one, pick your niche. What I think way too many people do is they jump into posting and they start willy-nilly posting reels and sharing TikToks and recording podcasts, but they have no idea who they're talking to. And that's what I mean when I say niche. When I say niche, I mean, who are you talking to? Like the demographics of your ideal avatar, your ideal follower, and what are you talking to them about? So on TikTok, I had neither of those things. I had who I was talking to was a bunch of other probably teenagers and college students. That's the who, which that's not my who. My who is business owners and entrepreneurs and creators who are building brands online. They're not 20 something year olds. And the what for me is helping people grow on social media, make money online, build a business on social media. Again, it was not who I had on TikTok, because who I had on TikTok was primarily people who were into dancing and twerking and funny little cute trends. So step one, you got to identify your niche. You got to figure out who you're talking to. And that's bigger than Instagram. That's whether you're starting on a podcast or a TikTok or a YouTube channel or whatever. If you want to grow, it starts with niche. Step number 2 is once we have our niche identified, once we know who we're talking to, we need to optimize our bio so that it clearly articulates, why am I here? Like, why should someone follow you? Your bio needs to operate like a billboard. I see way too many people putting these like cliche expressions, live your best life, I help you, be the best you. What do those things mean? You need to clearly identify the problems that these people are having. Not, I help you live the life of your dreams, but I help women who are between the ages of 30 and 40 come up with daily outfit ideas. Boom, plain and simple. That's what they struggle with. They struggle with putting together an outfit. You need to articulate that in your bio.
Can I stop you there for a second? Because
Yeah.
I feel like one of the reasons why people do not do this, I brand myself on confidence. And one of the things that I believe that stops people from doing that is they're not confident enough to own what they're an expert in. And so they try
100%.
to dance around exactly what they do because they're like, well, I don't know if I can say that. And I'm like, if you don't say that, they're sure as shit not going to hire you.
Yeah. Yeah. And we all have the same feeling generally on our phones and on social media right now, which is I spend too much time on my phone. I spend too much time on social media. I follow too many people. I don't see enough posts from the people I care about. And so if I'm going to follow you, like it better be worth it. Sure, I discovered you because you made some great posts. Some reel went viral. Maybe one of your friends tagged me in your post. But if I'm actually going to follow you, I need to know what I'm going to get out of your page. I need to know what makes you different from everyone else. And can you specifically solve my problem, fill my need, fill my void or my gap, whatever it may be. So that's step one. Step two is, like I was saying, kind of optimizing the profile, optimizing the bio, getting it all set up correctly. So that's your storefront, right? Like you can't have a storefront with sloppy mess on the ground and an off-center sign and all that stuff. Then it gets to posting. Step 3 is when it actually comes to posting, when it actually comes to consistency. And there's a million different strategies that some are consistently working for the last decade, some are new in the last couple of weeks, but that's when it gets to posting. And the bottom line is there's 2 kinds of posts. There are 2 kinds of criteria that you should worry about within posting: the quality of your post and the quantity of posts that you're making. If you can dial up both of those 2 things, it's just a numbers game. Social media and the algorithms, at the end of the day, they're a numbers game. And if you can increase the quality of your posts and increase the quantity of your posts or the frequency of your consistency, then you will grow, plain and simple.
Yep, I 100% agree with that. I actually think it's really helpful. I was talking to one of my clients the other day, and he's a speaker, does very, very well. And the difference between him and someone like an Ed Milet, now that his message is so dialed in, and every time he puts out a post, like his ideal audience 100% knows that, he's speaking to them. Then it's just, are you willing to, whether it be yourself, whether you paid ads, whether you spend the money for team, whatever it is, do you do 5 posts a week or are you doing 50 posts a week? Because it becomes a numbers game at that period of time. Like the big people, and I'm assuming, you're one of them, the big people are putting the time, effort, energy, money, whatever it is behind making sure they're out there 500 times when the little guy is only out there 5 times.
Exactly. Hit the nail on the head. Exactly.
Yeah. But remember the very first thing, just what Brock said, which is you have to make sure that you're speaking to the absolute exact person you need to talk to. I released a podcast today with a woman who talked about she boosts her posts. And the thing that she is so good at is she said, it took me about a year, but I dialed in exactly to a T who was clicking on those posts, what really resonated with her audience. And then she spent the money. I think so many people in the beginning, paid ads, they get in there themselves and they boost them and they do all the things. But that is the biggest waste of money unless that is exactly hitting home with your audience.
Yeah. That's exactly what I always say. Like I always say, hire an ads expert. If you don't want to devote the time to doing the research yourself or figuring it out yourself, hire an expert to do that for you. But even more so, if you're boosting posts that already are not performing well, well, then you're essentially forcing people to sit down and watch a terrible movie. Like imagine like the Barbie movie. Everyone loves talking about the Barbie movie and all the marketing that went into the Barbie movie. Imagine if the Barbie movie was terrible. It wasn't. It was a great movie. But imagine if that first weekend when everyone went and saw it, it was a horrible movie. And yet they continue to put all this marketing into having more people see it. It would be terrible. No one would ever go to that director's movies again. No one would ever trust that studio. No one would ever trust that marketing campaign. But because it was good, well, then the ad dollars were worth it. But what a lot of people are doing is they have a post that doesn't do well. And then they're like, hey, more people, look at this post that already I know is a bad post. And it's literally digging themselves into a deeper hole.
Okay, cool. So that's for the people who are brand new. So what about the people who have been online for a little while? They feel like their messaging is a little bit closer to where it needs to be, but they're still not getting the reach and they're still not making the money that they want. What is your, advice there?
Yeah, I think that it's really a case by case situation. I think that you have to go back to those two things. If you have your niche clearly defined, if your profile is truly set up well, I don't want to say perfectly, but well optimized, can you increase the quality of your post? And that doesn't just mean, buy a fancy camera and a nice microphone. That means like every little bit that goes into the editing and the refining of really what makes a high quality post on social media, or I should say, or can you increase the quantity? Can you dial up the consistency or the frequency of your output so that, that numbers game, you can start to tip things more in your favor? But also, I think that there are a lot of people, and this is a big conversation. We could spend an entire hour breaking down, like, should you start over or not? I think a lot of people have, let's use Instagram, for example. They've been on Instagram for 8 years. They've built 4,000 followers on Instagram over the course of those 8 years, and they're just really struggling. They've changed their niche a few times. They've changed businesses a few times. They've pivoted, and they're just struggling to grow. Well, likely over those 8 years, those 4,000 followers are not all still active, right? Some of them had their accounts deleted. Some of them got hacked. Some of them are no longer on this earth. So those 4,000 people, it's really more like, let's say 3,500 or 3,000. Plus, a lot of those people followed you 8 years ago and they don't even know who you are anymore. They're not even into those same things. You pivoted a bunch of times. So like there's all of these factors that are just consistently holding you back. Like it's that many barriers between you and the goal, which is growth. So if that's you, you might be better off starting over, like we were talking about earlier. Again, like we were talking about with my TikTok, you might be better off starting fresh and having a really engaged community of 300 than a really disengaged community of 40,000.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think about the all of the changes that obviously consistently happen on social media. Everyone talks about them. Everyone's using, I'm shadow banned or Instagram doesn't like me and all of those kind of things, which I believe most of that is probably untrue. What would you say, like, because obviously, you're in with Meta and Facebook and Instagram and all the things, like how, I guess it's all the exact same thing. Sorry, that sounded bad, but you know what I meant.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is, like, since everything is changing, do you see something that like really can't be, quote unquote hacked by that? Like, what is is it just consistency? Is it just messaging? What do you think are the things that people need to really concentrate on?
Yeah. So there are so many little hacks about like improving your quality, making a more engaging video, how to phrase your hooks, those sort of things that can, like, nitty gritty things that can make a small difference. But at the end of the day, is your content the content that your ideal followers want to see? Not what you want to see, not what you want to create, not what you want them to want to see, but truly like what they want to see and what they want to engage with. And if it is, that's what the algorithms want. Like it's so silly to me how there's all these like people freaking out about algorithm updates and new changes to the platform. All these social media apps for the last 15 years have been driven by the same desire. They've all had the same goal, which is they want us, the users, to stay on there, spend more time on their platform so that they can sell more ads and charge more for ad dollars. Like, no one's buying ads on MySpace nowadays, but an ad on Google or Meta's platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads costs a lot of money. And so they're able to charge that because we're spending time there. And so at the end of the day, if your post is making people spend more time on the platform, which is judged by either their engagement with your post, like the likes and the comments and the saves, or it's judged by straight up how much time are they looking at it for, like their view duration, how much time are they spending with your post? It's judged by those two things. And so if you're making a post that people are spending a lot of time reading, watching, consuming, and then a lot of engagement and interaction, then the post will do well. It will be shown to more people. That's how the algorithms work. That's all the social medias want from you. And so, like you said, very few people are actually shadow banned. Very few people are actually on Mark Zuckerberg's do not fly list. Most of us are just suffering from posts that aren't very good and that our audience doesn't really want to see. And so if we can improve those things and make our audience actually, or make content that our audience actually wants to see, we'll have success.
When did you decide? I'm assuming you have, I'm assuming you have a pretty big team.
I do.
Yeah. Okay.
A decent team. I wouldn't say a huge team, but
okay.
I don't have a VaynerMedia team, but I do have a team. Yes.
Okay. So when did you decide? Because I think this does come down to like the mindset, everything I talk about is mindset and strategy, but I do think, the mindset behind it is, when did you decide that you are going to create a team and go kind of all in on this? Because I believe a lot of people are still sitting on the fence. I think people are like, oh, it's not working. And the reason why it's not working is because they're not 100% all in. So when did you decide that, like, okay, this shit is real. This is what I'm going to do. And I'm going all in. When did you decide that, and then decide to really double down like on team and ads and strategy?
Yeah. Before I was ready. Before
Correct.
I felt confident that it was the right decision, before I felt like I could afford it.
Yeah.
I hired my first team member when I was 19, when I started that first business, when I had that Snapchat business. And to be honest, I didn't even really know what to have her do at first. Like I hired her. She's awesome. And she's actually still with our company today.
Wow. That's so cool.
I know, like 7-8 years later, we actually had a big team meeting the other day, and it fired me up that she was still on the team. First ever person I ever hired. I hardly even knew what to tell her to do. So I was like, why don't you give me a weekly trend report on what's going on Snapchat? Like, what are people talking about on Snapchat? I hardly knew what to even have her do. But just the fact that I was now responsible for another person's income, their own livelihood, their well-being, the fact that I now was quite literally in a leadership role and had someone who I was giving directions to, that lit the fire under me. And that made me start increasing my output without necessarily increasing my time or my energy in the business. I was just a lot more focused and I was getting a lot more done. And so in that first month after we hired Joyce, and this, I say we, like it was just me and Joyce. That was our whole team at the time. In that month, the business made double what it made in the 6 months prior, which were the first 6 months in the business. So month 7 was double the total income of months 1 through 6. And I was like, yep, that's it. I'm sold. I'm keeping Joyce. I'm going to find more things for her to do. I'm going to outsource more for her. And so that's when I doubled down. And now I have, specifically for me and my content, we have a much bigger team within Team Johnson. I work very closely. I actually work within my parents' business on a few things now. But for me personally, between my wife and I, she is our CFO. So she does like all of our investments, taxes, money. She deals with all that stuff. So I don't have to. She's very type A. So lucky I married her. But besides that, I have a community manager who does my DMs and comments for me, so that I don't have to be scrolling through comments and interacting with people when I'm at the dinner table. I can have someone who that's her full-time job. I have an assistant who manages like my day-to-day, my schedule, my email inbox, that sort of thing. I did recently hire an agency to help work with and kind of manage my brand partnerships. That was something that I had been doing myself, but now it's gotten to the point where I have a couple brand deals I'm doing every single month, and I just wanted to pass that off to a team to be able to handle my partnerships for me. And then I also have an editor who's awesome. I outsourced my editing in January, so about maybe 9 months ago now. She's been editing my content for me, my reels. And then I also have a graphic designer who edits like my carousels and my photos, my infographics, that sort of thing. So I think altogether on my social media, there's maybe 5 of us who have some sort of role to play. And most of them have joined the team in the last year and a half or so.
That's unbelievable. Good for you. So where do you like spending most of your time? Because I actually think that like one of the things that I can tell about you is you really have like you enjoy your personal life. Like it feels like you are just like for 27 years old. Oh my gosh, you really, or 26 years old, you've really got your shit together. Like congratulations. Very cool. No, I know none of us are perfect, but you really have a good head on your shoulders. And it does seem that you actually love what you do. You recently married. I mean, I've been with my husband for 20 years. It's the most important thing, hands down, no question. It really does feel like you have a kind of a good grasp on like life as a whole. Where do you like spending most of your time? Is it just creating content?
Yes. Thank you very much for that. I really, really do appreciate it. I definitely don't have my shit together. But yes, that's where I enjoy spending my time, is creating content. My first thought that popped into my head when you said, where do you like spending your time? My first thought was, I was going to clarify, on social media or outside of social media, like within business or outside of business. I feel like a year ago, maybe, I was spending a lot of time on my phone, just kind of getting sucked into the doom scroll, and scrolling Instagram and TikTok, but not really purposefully. Now I set a goal for myself this year to have less than 5 hours of screen time per day. And it's funny that I set that goal. I should have set it much lower, because my real goal is like less than 3 hours a day. I spend less than 45 minutes a day on Instagram. The majority of my time is spent with content creation. I love getting in front of the camera, filming content, filming videos, creating content. I love doing those sorts of things within the business. I love taking on leadership roles within the business. I spend very little time scrolling. If I am, it's usually like because I'm intentionally like bored at the dentist and I'm going to scroll through TikTok for a little bit while I'm in the waiting room, or things like that. Or to specifically like do research. That's the other time that I'm scrolling, is if I'm looking for trends, looking to see like what editing techniques are really popping off right now that I can incorporate into my own content. But the vast majority of my day and the vast majority of my life is spent away from this thing and outside of social media. Instead, it's working on the business rather than in the business. It's time spent living life and doing all the actual important things besides posting reels.
Oh my God. Yes. Thank you for saying that. It's so true. I mean, you really have to treat it like a business. And I think that that's the best thing you can possibly do, because the minute it becomes your life, it becomes no fun and miserable, and you put so much pressure on it and you just want to quit and go do something else. So it's really cool that you've learned how to do that at such a young age. You have your podcast with your mom. Do you do a lot
Yep.
of speaking engagements? Do you like that aspect of the business, or is it more just like the content creation? Like, are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm very extroverted.
Okay.
My mom is a introvert who is outgoing. That's what she likes
Uh-huh.
to say. She's an outgoing introvert. She can
Yeah.
turn it on. I am an extrovert through and through.
Okay.
Um, I don't always love networking with people, but I flip and love speaking and talking. So yeah, I do a fair amount of public speaking. It's something I really enjoy doing. What I don't love about public speaking is necessarily like the travel and being away from my home or being away from my pets and my family. But I do love being on stage. It fires me up. It brings me a lot of energy, and it doesn't drain me. It doesn't scare me or overwhelm me. It's something I've been doing for maybe 7 or 8 years now. And so it's something I really, really enjoy.
That's so cool. Last question. Like, what is next for you besides obviously doing what you do really, really well in the business? What's next for you? And then outside of the business?
Yeah, I think there's a few things here. In the business right now, what we're doing is we're adding a lot more team members. So we're growing our business by maybe 2 to 3 times the amount of staff,
Wow.
so
Good for
that
you.
I can spend a lot less time within the day-to-day operations in the business and a lot more time being the CEO, being a leader, and kind of being the visionary for the next stage of the business. Also, my wife and I are getting into more advising and investing for other like tech startups and stuff like that, because we do kind of operate in this space where we can play between business owner, someone who coaches business owners, and influencer, like kind of play all three roles. And then also what's coming up is snowboard season. So I'm flipping fired up for this winter and getting to strap the boots on and go snowboarding probably every single morning, 5 days a week, this December through April.
Good for you. That's so cool. Do you have summer sports? Like, what do you do in the summer?
We have tons of hobbies. I
Okay.
would last summer was a big pickleball summer, but this
Oh my
summer we
God, for
didn't. I didn't even.
everyone.
I know, right? But I was so intimidated now that we moved to Park City because there's this like court that's not too far from our house, and there's legitimately 70 people there who are waiting in line, and I can tell they're serious about their pickleball. So we didn't do too much of it this summer, but we just recently adopted a new baby bird, so we're taking care of him. We got our dogs. We love being outdoors. We love hiking and traveling in our trailer and doing all that stuff. So our hobby is collecting hobbies. My wife and I have a lot of different things in the garage, lots of things in the garage that have been used a few times, and then we'll probably dust them off in a few years when that hobby comes back around.
Oh my gosh, I love it. You know what, you guys, this was such an informative episode. It was so nice to connect with you, Brock. I've loved following you over the years. I know that everyone probably knows you, but in case they don't, where in the world do we find you most often?
Yeah, myspace.com/Brock. No, Brock 11 Johnson. That's where I am across all socials. The best place to connect with me is Instagram. Between myself and my direct message manager, we'll get to 99% of the messages. So if you enjoyed today's podcast and you want to shoot me a message on Brock 11 Johnson, it would be greatly appreciated.
Absolutely, you guys, please, please, please go follow him. He's the best, and share him with one person that may not be living under a rock and don't know Brock. So thank you so much for being here. I really truly appreciate it. And you guys don't forget, you can decide it's your turn at any moment in time.
Thank you so much.